You don't forget a moment like that. The cold. The silence. The sound of your own heartbeat louder than everything around you. And the question that keeps repeating in your head, why me? That morning should have been like any other. But something in the world decided my skin was a threat before I even said good morning. It was a chilly Monday morning in Southridge, a modest, working-class suburb tucked on the edge of Atlanta. The sun hadn't yet crept over the rooftops, and the bus stop at Elm and Fifth was buzzing with students, bundled in hoodies and backpacks, waiting for the 6:45 a.m. school route. Among them stood 13-year-old Jalen Carter. Slim, quiet, and always with a book in hand, Jalen was known in the neighborhood as the smart kid who never caused trouble. Raised by his single mother Tanya Carter, a night shift nurse, Jalen kept to himself, got good grades, and spent weekends reading at the community library. He lived in a red brick duplex with peeling paint and a wind chime that clinked like soft bells outside his bedroom window. Tanya, his mother, would kiss his forehead every morning before heading home from her shift. "Read something brilliant today, baby," she'd always say. That morning, like every other, Jalen stood near the corner of Elm and Fifth, reading aloud softly to himself. Something about the Harlem Renaissance, a topic he was obsessed with lately. He wore a second-hand hoodie, his school ID clipped to the front zipper. The chill in the air didn't bother him. Reading warmed him. Without warning, the calm was shattered. A black and white police cruiser rolled to a slow stop near the corner. Two officers, Officer Blake and Officer Simmons, stepped out. A couple of birds scattered from a nearby trash can. "You!" Officer Blake barked. "What are you doing here?" Jalen looked up, confused. "I'm waiting for my bus. To school." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Got ID on you?" "Sir, I'm 13, Jalen replied. "I have a school ID." Without further explanation, Officer Blake moved forward, gripping Jalen by the arm. The crowd of students gasped. "What's in your pockets?" "Empty, M." "Now." Jalen, frightened and shaking, obeyed. Out came a pencil, a granola bar, and a worn-out library card. The second officer grabbed his backpack and dumped it on the sidewalk, scattering books and school supplies. The kids watched in stunned silence. Some pulled out phones. A few stepped back. One girl whispered, "Why are they doing that?" "Hey! What are you doing?" a voice rang out from across the street. It was Miss Thompson, Jalen's 8th grade homeroom teacher, just arriving at the school parking lot. She dropped her coffee and rushed toward the scene. "He's my student." "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded. Blake stood firm. "Got a call about suspicious activity. Said someone matching his description was loitering." Miss Thompson stepped between Jalen and the officers. "He's not suspicious, he's a kid. Waiting for a school bus. And if you'd bothered to ask anyone here, they could have told you." Blake grumbled. "We're just doing our job." She snapped back, "Well, your job just traumatized a child. I'll be reporting this." They left. Jalen was still shaking, humiliated in front of his peers. His books soaked from the wet sidewalk. That incident was just the beginning. By the time the school bell rang, whispers filled the halls. Students told teachers. Teachers talked in the break room. And by noon, Miss Thompson was already writing. She titled her blog post, "When My Student Was Treated Like a Criminal for Waiting on the Bus." That night, Jalen sat on the couch, knees to his chest, not saying a word. Tanya rubbed his back and whispered, "You didn't do anything wrong. You were just being you." He nodded, but the wound was fresh. He didn't feel brave. He felt violated. But sometimes, the smallest ripples start the biggest waves. The blog post Miss Thompson wrote didn't just sit quietly on the school's website, first to a few teachers in other districts. Then to Facebook. Then Twitter. By the next morning, the post had been shared over 20,000 times. Tanya scrolled through her phone while sipping burnt hospital coffee in the break room. Her hands trembled as she saw the headline trending, #Justice for Jalen. When she walked into the house that morning, Jalen was still in bed. He hadn't wanted to go to school. "They all saw it, Ma. Everyone. They're gonna look at me different now." Tanya sat on the edge of his bed, brushing back his curls. Baby, they saw something wrong, and now people are standing up. That means something. You didn't do anything wrong. At school, the mood was different. Teachers smiled at Jalen with sympathy, but the stares from other kids were heavy, curious, awkward, and sometimes silent. He hated it. He didn't want pity. He wanted to be invisible again. Miss Thompson pulled him aside. Hey, I want you to know, what happened wasn't your fault. And you, being smart and kind and black, that's never the problem. Okay. Jalen nodded. But even as he tried to move on, the storm outside was growing. Local news stations picked up the story. Then national outlets. CNN called the school. MSNBC aired a panel discussion. By the end of the week, it wasn't just Southridge talking about Jalen, it was America. Activists started organizing. Petitions were launched calling for an investigation into the officers. One reached over 150,000 signatures in 48 hours. Saturday afternoon, Tanya opened the front door to find a young man in a suit and glasses holding a notepad. Mrs. Carter? I'm Jordan Lee from the Southern Justice Coalition. We'd like to help. Jalen peeked from behind the curtains. They sat at the kitchen table. Jalen listened quietly as Jordan explained they were starting a town hall meeting and wanted Jalen to speak. Jalen looked up, eyes wide. Speak. Me. Tanya touched his shoulder. Only if you want to. He swallowed. The idea terrified him. But something inside flickered. That night, he sat on the porch, journal in hand. Scribbling. Erasing. Scribbling again. He thought of the red and blue lights. The way it felt to have his backpack dumped out like trash. The way Miss Thompson stood up for him. The way his mom held his hand, even when her hands were tired from healing others. He wrote. My name is Jalen Carter. I'm not a threat. I'm not a suspect. I'm a student, a reader, a dreamer. And I deserve to be seen. He didn't know it yet, but that line would change everything. The town hall meeting was scheduled for the following Friday evening at the Southridge Community Center. By midweek, flyers were posted in diners and libraries. Social media buzzed with anticipation. Local leaders, news reporters, and families from all across the city confirmed attendance. Jalen hadn't said yes yet. Each day, he practiced his words in front of the mirror, sometimes whispering, sometimes stopping halfway through. His hands would tremble. You don't have to, Tanya reminded him gently every night. You're brave whether you speak or not. But Jalen knew this wasn't just about him anymore. That Friday evening, the sun dipped behind the clouds as the line wrapped around the community center. Cameras lined the back wall. Miss Thompson stood in the front row. Tanya held Jalen's hand as they entered. The MC took the mic. Tonight, we're here because a child was wronged. But more importantly, we're here to listen to that child's truth. Please welcome Jalen Carter. Applause. Jalen stepped up slowly, his feet heavy as bricks. He reached the mic. The room hushed. I never thought I'd be here, he began, voice shaking. I'm not used to speaking in front of people. I'm used to being quiet. Reading. Listening. He took a deep breath. But that day, the one you all heard about, they made me feel like I wasn't human. Like I didn't belong. Like I was danger just for standing still. That day, I felt small. Murmurs of emotion echoed in the room. A few heads bowed. But something changed when Miss Thompson stood up. When my mom held me. When all of you said this wasn't okay. I started to feel, not so small. He paused, scanning the room. So if me being here can remind someone else that they deserve to be seen, then I'm glad I spoke. Silence. Then a wave of applause. Standing ovation. That moment went viral. Again. Within days, Jalen was invited to speak on national television. CNN. NPR. He didn't say yes to everything. He chose carefully. Meanwhile, the police department launched an internal investigation. Officer Blake and Simmons were temporarily suspended. But the most powerful change wasn't in headlines, it was in classrooms. Students talked about race. Teachers re-examined school safety protocols. Parents started organizing diversity forums. Jalen went back to school. Some things were awkward, but many weren't. He started a student reading circle. His first pick, Langston Hughes. Because Jalen Carter wasn't just the boy from the bus stop anymore. He was the voice that reminded a community what it meant to see each other. Jalen Carter's story, once confined to a quiet corner of Southridge, now echoed in households, classrooms, and council meetings across America. What started as a personal injustice had evolved into a national moment of reckoning. But for Jalen, the most profound changes were still happening inside, where fear, shame, and isolation had begun to crack, making room for courage, voice, and vision. A week after the town hall meeting, Jalen was back in school. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and boldly. With Miss Thompson's encouragement and Tanya's endless support, he agreed to launch a weekly reading club called Chapters of Change. Each Friday, a group of 20 students, Black, White, Latino, and Asian, gathered in the library after school. They read poems by Maya Angelou, short stories by James Baldwin, essays by Audre Lorde. They shared snacks, ideas, and slowly, their own stories. "This isn't about books," Jalen said once. "It's about seeing each other better. And listening like it matters." Local news covered the club. Teachers volunteered to sponsor more. A nearby school district invited Jalen to help start similar clubs. Within 3 months, 5 more schools had reading groups inspired by Jalen's. Meanwhile, the investigation into officers Blake and Simmons made headlines. Body camera footage confirmed Jalen's account. In an unexpected move, the Southridge police chief, Lisa Gardner, issued a public apology. Jalen Carter was failed by those who were supposed to protect him. "We cannot undo what was done, but we can commit to doing better." She announced a new racial sensitivity training program for all officers and appointed a civilian advisory board to oversee interactions involving youth. But not everyone welcomed the changes. One evening, as Tanya drove Jalen home from a city meeting, they noticed a car trailing them too closely. When they turned, it followed. Tanya's grip on the wheel tightened. Jalen stared into the mirror, heart racing. Finally, the car sped past, but not before a passenger rolled down the window and yelled, "Keep your mouth shut, boy." Tanya pulled over, hands shaking. She dialed Miss Thompson, then Jordan Lee from the Southern Justice Coalition. They filed a report, but Jalen didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, he stared at himself in the mirror. "I'm not going to stop," he whispered. "They don't get to scare me back into silence." That day, he wore a shirt to school that read, "Seen. Heard. Unapologetically me." Miss Thompson hugged him. The school counselor asked to use his speech in a district-wide training. A documentary filmmaker contacted Tanya. "Your son's voice is changing lives," she said. "We want to help share it." Tanya hesitated. "Only if it doesn't exploit him." Jalen agreed, but only under one condition: the documentary had to feature other kids, too. "This isn't just about me," he said. It never was. Over the next several months, Jalen became the face of a youth-led initiative called Let Us Be Us. It focused on educating teachers, reforming school discipline policies, and bridging conversations between youth and law enforcement. He traveled to conferences, spoke on panels, published op-eds. On the 1-year anniversary of the bus stop incident, he returned to the same corner. This time, not alone. Hundreds of students, teachers, parents, and community members stood with him, wearing shirts with the now famous quote, "I'm not a threat. I'm not a suspect. I'm a student, a reader, a dreamer. And I deserve to be seen." Jalen held the mic and looked over the crowd. "I used to think I was just a kid who read too much," he said. "But reading gave me the words. And the words gave me power. Now I know, I'm not alone. And I never have to be." Miss Thompson wiped tears. Tanya clutched her chest. Even the mayor stood applauding. Months later, when Jalen received the Youth Advocate of the Year award from the NAACP, he stood tall at the podium, no longer that quiet boy afraid to speak. "I didn't ask for this spotlight," he said. "But now that I have it, I'll use it to light the path for others." He closed with a quote by Langston Hughes. "I, too, am America." The audience rose to their feet. From that single moment at a bus stop, a movement had grown. From a trembling voice came a generation ready to be heard. Jalen's story wasn't just a news cycle. It was a call to action. A reminder that silence can be broken, injustice confronted, and hope, when spoken aloud, can echo loud enough to change the world. It had been nearly 2 years since the day Jalen Carter sat silently at a Southridge bus stop, clutching his books as 2 officers surrounded him. But now, standing before a crowd of thousands in Washington, D.C. at the National Youth Justice Summit, Jalen's voice carried across the National Mall like a rallying cry. He wore a suit his mom bought him from the local outlet mall and a pin on his chest that read, "Justice isn't quiet." The sun warmed his face as he looked out at the crowd, students, teachers, activists, parents, all gathered because of voices like his. "2 years ago, I was just a kid on my way to school," Jalen began, his voice calm, confident. "I didn't know speaking the truth would make me a target. I didn't know silence would cost me more than I could carry. But I learned something that day. That when your dignity is stripped from you in public, the only thing left to do is reclaim it, loudly." Cheers rang out. Jalen continued. "I was harassed. I was humiliated. But I wasn't broken. And I wasn't alone. That's what changed everything." Flashback, 6 months earlier. Jalen and Tanya sat in the principal's office at Southridge High. He had just been nominated to join the Governor's Youth Council on Equity and Reform. "I'm just not sure I'm ready," Jalen said. "What if I mess up?" Tanya took his hand. "You didn't ask for this road, baby. But you were built to walk it. You don't have to be perfect. Just be honest. Just be you." With her support, and Miss Thompson cheering from the sidelines, Jalen accepted the role. Through the council, he worked with lawmakers to rewrite legislation on student rights, particularly around school policing. He co-authored a bill that required body cam transparency, student protection training for officers, and community review boards for every public school district in the state. The bill passed. Jalen watched from the gallery as the governor signed it into law. When reporters asked how it felt, he simply said, "It feels like we're finally being heard." Back to present, National Youth Justice Summit. Jalen wrapped up his speech with a pledge. "I stand for every kid who ever looked down at the ground when they were told to speak up. I stand for those who were told they were too loud, too angry, too black, too young. I stand for hope, not the kind that waits, but the kind that walks." The applause thundered. A banner overhead waved, "Let us be us, youth voices changing America." Post-summit, press interview. A reporter asked, "Jalen, what's next for you?" He smiled. "College. I want to study law. I want to teach. I want to keep building spaces where kids don't have to earn their humanity. It should be theirs by birth." Tanya, watching from the side, wiped away a tear. Miss Thompson, who had flown in for the summit, held her phone up, recording every moment. Epilogue, 6 months later. Jalen sat in a classroom at Howard University. He was now a freshman on scholarship, majoring in political science. On his dorm room wall hung framed photos, him and Tanya, him and Miss Thompson, a newspaper clipping from the bus stop incident, and a print of Langston Hughes' I, too. His roommate, a fellow activist from Chicago, pointed to the article. "You really changed things, man." Jalen smiled. "Nah. We changed things. And we're just getting started." He pulled out his notebook and scribbled. "When the system cracks, light gets in. That's where we shine. True change doesn't come from silence, it comes from the courage to speak, even when your voice shakes. Let us all listen better, act braver, and never forget, dignity cannot be denied when it is demanded. Your voice matters, even when they try to silence it. Especially then."